Hi, my name is Mark Kelly. I'm co-host of The Fifth Estate, and welcome to CBC Radio-Canada's 5th annual public meeting, live from the Glenn Gould Studio at the Canadian Broadcasting Centre in Toronto, Ontario. I'd like to welcome people across Canada tuning in live on the web and Twitter here in Toronto.
Bonjour, mon nom est Catherine Lafrance, je suis animatrice du téléjournal Ontario édition Week-end. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue à tous les participants en ligne et dans le studio Glenn Gould à notre Assemblée publique annuelle. J'aimerais aussi souligner la présence des membres du conseil d'administration de Radio-Canada CBC, les membres de l'équipe de la haute direction également présents dans la salle et évidemment aussi sur le web.
Also with us today, some of your favorite CBC and Radio-Canada hosts. They will join us in the second half of the event today for a discussion on how radio is changing and how new technology is making it easier for Canadians to talk to one another. And we really want to pick up on that because it's very fitting that CBC Radio-Canada is holding its annual public meeting on this, which is, of course, Canadian Citizenship Week, which is held from the 21st to the 27th of October. And as you know, CBC Radio-Canada continues to promote and share stories of new Canadians and those whose families have been here for generations. And this week is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on our citizenship and what it means to be Canadian and how we engage in society both here and away as Canadians.
Une période de questions suivra la discussion du panel. Nous accepterons les questions en direct de la salle, par courriel, sur Twitter également. Pour ceux d'entre vous qui sont en ligne, je vous invite à envoyer vos questions immédiatement, maintenant. Allez simplement au champ des questions dans votre lecteur web pour nous les envoyer. Pour ceux d'entre vous qui seront sur Twitter, utilisez le mot-clé RCAPA.
For those of you online, I invite you to start sending in your questions right away. Simply go to the question field in your web player to send us your questions. And for those of you on Twitter, use the hashtag CBCAPM. All right, here we go. Now let's please welcome Rémi Racine. He's chair of CBC Radio-Canada's Board of Directors. Rémi.
Hello, everyone. Whether you're here in the Glenn Gould Studio at the Toronto Broadcasting Centre or following us on the web or Twitter, welcome to CBC Radio-Canada 5th Annual Public Meeting. It's been a busy year for the Board of Directors. Over the past few months, we've said goodbye to colleagues who've completed their terms and welcomed some new directors to the board. Here with me in Toronto are Vivian Berkovich and Ted Boyd. Others are watching the broadcast live right now. One thing is certain, the new board members, like the one they replaced, are strongly committed to CBC Radio-Canada. The board takes its responsibility for ensuring the corporation good governance very seriously. Mais nous sommes conscients que tous les radiodiffuseurs publics dans le monde sont aux prises avec des questions comme celle de la pertinence, du caractère distinctif de leur offre, de leur financement et de leur contenu. Grâce à son plan stratégique quinquennal pour 2015, CBC Radio-Canada devient plus numérique, plus présent dans les régions et encore plus canadienne. Le Conseil a approuvé ce plan en 2011 et suit de très près le progrès de la compagnie à ce chapitre et nous en sommes très fiers. Aujourd'hui, alors que nous nous trouvons à mi-chemin dans la mise en œuvre du plan, il est temps de regarder encore plus loin. Le Conseil est responsable d'approuver la préparation du prochain plan stratégique. Le Comité de planification stratégique, sous le leadership de Ted Boyd, reçoit les rapports d'étape de la direction, les commente, les améliore au besoin et transmet la rétroaction du Conseil à la haute direction. Ces échanges ont pour objectif d'appuyer l'équipe de la haute direction dans la conception d'une orientation future pour le radiodiffuseur public qui sera à la fois convaincante et passionnante pour le public canadien. All the while, we must never lose sight of the fact that if the public broadcaster is to continue serving Canadians in 2020, 2030, or 2050 or beyond, we must be sensitive to the importance of reflecting a diversity of voices and managing public funds effectively and responsibly. That's why the annual public meeting is an important exercise for the CBC Radio-Canada board. It's all about transparency. It's an important opportunity for Canadians to ask questions and share their expectation for the future of CBC Radio-Canada. I will now turn this thing over to Hubert Lacroix, the President and CEO. Hubert?
Merci. Morning, everyone. Bonjour à vous tous. So let me start by playing you something.
This is CBC News.
Le radio-journal de Radio-Canada.
What did you think of when you heard those sounds? For me, those sounds are familiar, they're safe, but they're attention-grabbing. They are telling me that something important is about to happen, and they force me to pause. Feelings like these are the product of a long-standing relationship with Canadians, one that is based on integrity, quality, and trust, and built throughout the delivery of our various services. En tant que radiodiffuseur public du Canada, nous sommes plus qu'une simple entreprise de médias. Nous faisons partie des communautés que nous servons et nous croyons que le rôle que nous jouerons demain est aussi important que le rôle que nous avons joué dans le passé. C'est pourquoi, au printemps dernier, nous avons lancé une conversation à l'échelle du pays à propos du 150e anniversaire de la Confédération que nous fêterons en 2017. En partenariat avec Via Rail et les fondations communautaires du Canada, nous avons organisé 12 conférences à travers le pays. Nous voulions offrir au Canada un espace public où les Canadiens pourraient se rassembler, partager leurs histoires et commencer à planifier les activités pour célébrer le 150e. En tout, 1200 délégués des communautés ont participé aux rencontres et ont écouté 90 conférenciers présenter leur vision du pays. CBC Radio-Canada a donc tissé des liens, facilité les rencontres, accéléré les idées. Voilà ce que nous faisons et ce que nous faisons très bien. Format of today's annual public meeting is a fitting reminder of how much our world has changed. Let's take radio, for example, the theme of today's panel discussion. It used to be seen as a one-way source of information. Well, radio is much more than that today. It's evolved into a two-way channel for discussion and dialogue. From Cross-Country Checkup to Espace Music's webpage, the audience is as much part of the broadcast as the host himself. New digital tools allow us to engage with Canadians in real time, and they complement and enhance the broadcast in ways that we have never imagined before. And this is resonating with our audiences. Here are some of our recent results. CBC Radio-Canada, on the CBC Radio side, had an exceptionally strong audience performance last year, with a combined share of 15.3. This was the highest ever fall share for CBC Radio 1 and the highest fall share for CBC Radio 2 since 2008. And get this, last year, 20 of 23 of our local CBC Radio 1 morning shows placed in the top 3, with 12 of them at number 1. Ici, Radio-Canada Première et Espace Musique ont aussi connu une année exceptionnelle, avec des parts d'écoute combinées de 18,5 %, bien supérieures à notre cible de 16 %. So Strategy 2015 has made us more digital, and changes in how we deliver audio programming are a big part of that shift. Think Espace.mu, CBC Music, CBCmusic.ca, smartphone apps, live streaming, podcasts, all of that available all the time. Vous conclurez donc avec nous que nous nous transformons. Nous remettons sans cesse en cause le statu quo. Nous cherchons à créer une relation personnelle et intime avec chacun de nos auditeurs. And you don't have to look any further than our 5 hosts today participating in our panel. They do just that. They look to create relationships. And a few minutes ago, we realized that they represent 68 years of CBC Radio-Canada experience. First, Steve Patterson and the Debaters. His radio show, which at one time also was a TV program, is produced in communities across the country. I attended a number of his tapings, and in particular the one he did at Bishop's University last year. And I saw again, firsthand, the connection, the dynamic connection between Steve, the content of the show, and the live audience. And by the way, you should know that Steve just won, again for the second time, Best Male Stand-Up at the Canadian Comedy Awards. Anna Maria Tremonti and The Current, well, they're celebrating their 11th year on air, and The Current was awarded in 2012 the Canadian Journalism Foundation Excellence in Journalism Award in the large national media category, and again was a finalist in June 2013. Rebecca McConnell est à l'image de notre univers multiplateforme. En fait, je crois que Rebecca est une personne multiplateforme. Depuis 4 ans, elle anime l'émission de variété Studio 12, diffusée à la télévision, à la radio et sur nos plateformes web. Elle collabore fréquemment aux émissions d'ici Radio-Canada Première et de CBC Radio, et en plus, est l'animatrice de Circuit McConnell sur Espace Musique. Matt Galloway is the host of Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1, Toronto's top-rated morning show. But you also saw Matt on the National do a great piece on a local school promoting diversity. By the way, in 2012, he was given the Excellence in Community Service Award for addressing issues confronting diverse communities. I also understand that it was your birthday yesterday, Matt. Congratulations and happy belated birthday. Enfin, Jean-Sébastien Bernatchez, animateur de l'Heure du Monde et chroniqueur à C'est pas trop tôt sur ici Radio-Canada Première, est aussi une figure bien connue sur nos plateformes numériques. Il utilise constamment Twitter pour échanger avec les auditeurs sur des sujets qui font l'actualité économique. Alors, leur contribution à notre programmation est un bon exemple de notre évolution et de notre désir de créer des liens intimes et personnels avec nos auditoires. J'en suis très fier. I'm also very proud of the fact that the Olympics will be returning to CBC Radio-Canada in February. And as the public broadcaster, you know that we will bring you more than just the medal count or the competitions themselves. Like we did in Beijing, we will bring you perspective and stories from Russia to ensure that Canadians understand the social, economic, and cultural context in which the games are being held. And true to our mandate, we will inform and enlighten as well as entertain. Before I continue, I want to share a video with you of what you should be expecting in February.
No one gets you closer to the Olympics than CBC Radio-Canada.
It's going to be amazing to show Canada who I am.
Personne ne vous rapproche autant des Jeux Olympiques que CBC Radio-Canada.
Je sais que je peux être sur le podium, que je peux rivaliser avec les meilleurs. Si tu mets la volonté, si tu mets l'effort, la machine, c'est toi qui performe, puis c'est toi qui vas réussir ce que tu veux faire.
we are proud to be the official broadcaster of Sochi 2014.
Nous sommes fiers d'être le diffuseur officiel de Sochi 2014.
And I love everything that Canada represents. So it's just this amazing opportunity and privilege for me to be able to do something that I love and to do it for my country.
CBC Radio Canada celebrates the Olympics by bringing Canadians together from coast to coast to coast.
CBC Radio-Canada célèbre les Jeux olympiques en rapprochant les Canadiens de toutes les régions au pays. Pour tout voir et savoir, de minute en minute, vous pouvez compter sur la couverture complète de Sochi 2014 sur toutes les plateformes de CBC Radio-Canada.
Quand on voit le Canada rentrer dans le stade olympique, on voit une personne, on voit un peuple uni. L'énergie qui nous transporte dans le stade, c'est l'énergie qui nous transporte à chaque jeu.
Get to know our athletes as they share their inspirational stories.
When I think ahead to Sochi, I picture a great team, not just my own, but all the athletes that are competing there.
J'ai gagné le championnat du monde 3 fois et ma personnalité a vraiment développé. J'ai plus de confiance. Je suis capable d'avoir une très bonne glisse sur la glace et c'est cet élément qui me sépare des autres patineurs.
Il va falloir que je fasse tout en mon pouvoir pour être prêt en haut de cette piste-là. C'est ce qui fait ma détermination. J'ai toujours été la personne qui a travaillé excessivement fort. Tant aussi longtemps que je vais skier, pour moi, être sur une piste, j'ai l'intention d'être le meilleur au monde à chaque jour.
Feeling the strength of everyone and the encouragement of everyone and being on such a great team, that'll just feel so amazing for me.
Connect with CBC Radio Canada for the biggest Olympic stories, whenever and wherever you want them.
En ligne, sur Facebook et sur Twitter, engagez la conversation avec CBC Radio-Canada en route vers Sochi 2014.
Join us as we take you to Sochi 2014.
Joignez-vous à nous en route vers Sochi 2014.
Pretty exciting stuff. So time now for Suzanne Morris, our CFO, and an update on our financial picture. Suzanne.
Merci, Hubert. Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be here today to provide you with a summary of the corporation's financial health and direction. Our annual report was provided to government on June 30th as required. We've not yet made it public, but we'll do so once it's tabled in the House. So let's start with fiscal 2012-2013. Revenues were lower for the year than in 2011-2012, following the hockey lockout. However, hockey returned stronger than ever with robust viewership and strong hockey revenues. Our expenses for last year were down, and that reflected a number of factors. We had lower production costs and spending on sports rights during the NHL lockout, and we implemented operating cost reductions across the corporation, and that was in response to Federal Budget 2012 and to reductions in the local Programming Improvement Fund. Overall, through the sound management of our expenses, we achieved a modest increase in our net results for 2012-2013. Passons maintenant à l'exercice en cours et aux résultats du premier trimestre. Ces résultats et notre situation financière à l'avenir reflètent le rendement de la société un an après qu'elle a commencé à composer avec des pressions financières de l'ordre de 200 millions de dollars. Les résultats comprennent notamment des réductions apportées à nos crédits parlementaires dans le cadre du budget de 2012. Au premier trimestre de 2013-2014, le résultat d'exploitation sur une base courante a avoisiné le point d'équilibre. Globalement, les revenus ont augmenté de presque 1 % et les revenus publicitaires, pour leur part, ont affiché une hausse en raison des auditoires qui ont été nombreux à regarder le hockey, tel que déjà mentionné. Nous avons aussi réalisé de nouvelles initiatives génératrices de revenus. Comme prévu, les dépenses ont baissé de 11 % à la suite de nos compressions budgétaires. Thanks to careful management, we have plans in place to ensure that CBC Radio-Canada continues to be positioned to deliver on its mandate and on our objectives under Strategy 2015. To date, we're on track to meet our financial plans for the year. Ongoing success, however, will depend on sustainable funding, on the strength of the advertising market, and on the performance of our overall revenues. Looking ahead to the second quarter and the balance of the year, we currently expect to achieve our overall revenue targets with programming that will include, of course, the Sochi Winter Olympic Games. We look forward to once again bringing the Olympic Games home to Canadians. We'll also continue to closely monitor key developments. This includes ongoing discussions with the NHL in the interest of renewing our broadcast rights contracts, which ends in June of 2014. In our 61st year, Hockey Night in Canada continues to connect Canadians from coast to coast to coast on a topic that we're all passionate about. And it's our objective to keep this tradition alive. Enfin, les Canadiens auront bientôt accès à de l'information plus complète sur nos résultats financiers et sur les indicateurs de rendement pour l'exercice 2012-2013 lorsque notre rapport annuel sera publié cet automne. Les rapports annuels et trimestriels précédents sont toujours accessibles sur notre site Web. Thank you, and back to you, Hubert.
Merci. Merci, Suzanne. Alors, culture canadienne, démocratie canadienne, expérience canadienne, aucun de ces concepts ne découle d'un processus hiérarchisé. C'est plutôt le fruit de la collaboration, du dialogue, l'interaction, d'échanges constants, passionnés et complets d'idées, de valeurs et de rêves entre citoyens. Nous voulons être l'endroit où ces conversations se déroulent. So let's have fun. Let's have a great session today. Let's dream big. Let's enjoy. But above all, let's stay connected. Thank you.
Merci Hubert. Alors voilà qui met fin à la première partie de notre Assemblée publique annuelle.
Okay, now Hubert was saying backstage, he said, you know, I'm not convinced, he admitted to us in a moment of candor, that all of you came today to listen to our annual report, though it was delivered with style and aplomb, and I applaud you for that. But apparently some of you may have come today to meet some of our radio panelists. And it is a great opportunity, and I certainly applaud the organizers of this meeting, to bring you these great radio talents today so you can have a chance to see them in the flesh and hear them as we have a great panel discussion and learn some of their insights about how they see the future of radio in this building. So it is my honor to be able to bring them up on stage. Let's start with the birthday boy, Matt Galloway. He's the host of Metro Morning, CBC Radio on 99.1 FM, the top-rated morning radio program in Toronto. Mr. Galloway, please take your seats.
Rebecca McConnell, comme Hubert l'a mentionné déjà, mais ça vaut le coup de répéter un petit peu parce qu'elle a une feuille de route fort intéressante. Elle anime Circuit McConnell tous les jours de 8h30 à midi sur les ondes d'Espace Musique dans la région de Montréal. Elle collabore fréquemment aux émissions d'ici Radio-Canada Première et de CBC Radio. On a aussi pu la voir à Guide Resto Voir, Musicographie, Débat Musique Plus, C'est juste la TV. Veuillez accueillir Rebecca.
Did we mention you're supposed to turn off your phones?
I think so. Something like that.
I thought we did.
Yeah, I thought we did.
I heard that. Okay, now to the man who's caught every week in the comedy crossfire, Steve Patterson. You know, you've heard him on The Debaters. Guy does a wonderful job on that program. Also stands up in front of crowds and delivers great comedy. Great to have you here with us today, Steve Patterson. You see, that kind of comedy does not work on radio. The pratfall. Anna Maria Tremonti has been a host of CBC Radio 1's The Current since it first burst onto the airwaves in November 2002. She brings a mix of hard-edged journalism and hard-won empathy to a 90-minute program that tackles everything from politics of the day to the changes that affect our society to the stories of individuals whose personal journeys and traumas affect us all. Anna Maria.
Jean-Sébastien Bernatchez anime depuis cet automne l'heure du monde de 18h à 19h sur ici Radio-Canada Première et collabore à l'émission régionale dans le Grand Montréal. C'est pas trop tôt. Il animait auparavant Classe économique depuis l'automne 2009, alors veuillez accueillir Jean-Sébastien. Chers collègues, soyez les bienvenus parmi nous aujourd'hui.
Okay, so we've got through the formalities. Everyone's settling in, and every year, as part of this annual public meeting, there's a discussion led by some of our CBC and Radio-Canada personalities. These exchanges provide an opportunity to get a glimpse of the work that they do. And in the past, we've had fascinating discussions, often with foreign correspondents who've come up here or other TV reporters. And I think it's great today that we have the focus on radio. Today's topic is today's radio broadening our conversations. Radio is, of course, changing, and hear how new technology is enriching today's conversation.
La radio fait partie de CBC Radio-Canada depuis ses débuts, rassemblant les Canadiens d'un océan à l'autre et compte sur un auditoire fidèle et même très fidèle. Toutefois, la radio traditionnelle connaît des changements. Le paysage médiatique évolue et nous devons être en mesure d'offrir aux Canadiennes et aux Canadiens ce qu'ils veulent, de la façon dont ils le veulent et bien sûr au moment où ils le veulent également.
Okay, so let's have a look at the following video. Oh, it's sort of a cross-media thing here. We're going to set up a radio discussion by watching a video. Take it away.
Why not?
This is CBC Radio 1.
Welcome to Cross Country Checkup. Works and Forks.
Writers and Company.
I'm Stuart McLean. This is the Vinyl Cafe.
Hello, Canada.
Ici Radio-Canada, Première.
Énergie, curiosité, convivialité.
Il va aussi avoir la force de l'information du réseau de Radio-Canada.
CBC Radio-Canada has connected Canadians from coast to coast to coast for over 75 years.
I'm Rex Murphy. This is Cross Country Checkup. What's your greetings from St. Paul? I'm on a BlackBerry here.
Canada lives here. Depuis plus de 75 ans, CBC et Radio-Canada tissent des liens entre les Canadiens de tout le pays.
CBC Radio 1.
Et ici Radio-Canada Première.
A strong presence in all regions that fosters the national conversation, so we can get to know each other better.
I'm Allison Smith. This is The World at 6.
Good morning and welcome to The Current. I'm Anna Maria Tremonti.
This is Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1. My name's Matt Galloway. What happens now in Syria?
CBC Radio 2.
I'm Rich Trufry. CBC Radio 2 Drive.
And Espace Musique gives listeners a deeper music experience with a variety of music for every mood, from adult alternative to jazz and classical.
Espace Musique et CBC Radio 2 offrent aux auditeurs une expérience musicale plus profonde, avec une variété de genres pour toutes les humeurs, de la musique alternative pour adultes au jazz, en passant par la musique classique.
From the early days, CBC Radio-Canada paved the way in broadcasting and played a unique role in sharing personal experiences, bringing Canadians closer together. Now, CBC Radio 1 and ici Radio-Canada Première are available everywhere you want them, whenever you want them.
Vous pouvez les écouter sur votre radio ou en ligne ou quand vous vous déplacez sur votre appareil mobile ou sous la forme de balado-diffusion. Vous pouvez aussi visiter cbcmusic.ca et espace.nu et programmer votre propre liste de diffusion et tout cela gratuitement.
CBC Music. Get it at home, get it on the go, get it anywhere.
Le jazz, je pourrais vous en parler.
Pour moi, la musique...
Moi, je pense que peu importe. Moi, la musique...
CBC Radio-Canada, le seul radiodiffuseur national qui rassemble tous les Canadiens.
Constantly evolving and moving forward with programming that speaks to every region across the country and around the world. CBC Radio, the future of radio.
Radio-Canada, l'avenir de la radio.
We've clearly got a lot to brag about. That's fantastic, and it's great to see. And certainly from an insider's perspective here at the CBC, I can tell you firsthand how CBC Radio and the resurgence of it. And Hubert was mentioning some of the numbers here, and the control that they have of so many markets has certainly been a point of pride for all of us working here at CBC, even if we work on the dark side like me in television. But Anna Marie, and that's what I want to start with you, because you and I, we do share that. I started my career at CBC Radio, CBC in radio, was back in 1990. You started in radio. You went to the dark side with me on TV for a while. Now you're back to the light of radio. And as we look at the way that the radio is evolving and connecting with Canadians, how do you see the difference between radio and TV and the impact that it has on audiences?
I think not to take anything away from TV, radio, for me as trying to follow stories, radio allows me to move quickly. You can literally turn on a dime with radio. Radio, I think, it's an old medium that is new again. It's going through a renaissance, and we're all lucky to be part of it right now. And you can have a conversation. You talk about the cold medium of TV and the hot medium of radio. And so when people are listening to you and they're part of your program, they feel like they're part of it. And they're not stepping back and watching it, they're literally engulfed by the sound. And in a funny way, when you listen to radio, you see it. But you see it in your mind, and so it forces you into a level of creativity, even as you listen to a discussion and get taken somewhere. So it's a wonderful medium, and you will not die of hairspray long in radio.
Thanks for that.
C'est intéressant, Anna Maria qui dit c'est un vieux médium, mais qui est nouveau encore une fois ou une nouvelle fois, c'est vrai, et notamment parce qu'il y a toutes sortes de changements technologiques. Jean-Sébastien, est-ce que la radio se renouvelle? Quel est le futur de la radio? Est-ce qu'elle prospère dans ces nouvelles technologies et le nouveau paysage médiatique qui est le nôtre maintenant?
C'est intéressant le thème prospère. Est-ce qu'elle prospère, la radio? Parce que je couvre beaucoup l'actualité économique. Et vous savez, si notre Assemblée aujourd'hui, c'était une Assemblée annuelle d'actionnaires, d'une radio commerciale, quand vous me demandez si elle prospère, je chercherais à vous dire, est-ce qu'on fait un bénéfice net? Est-ce que notre radio rapporte des profits? Et ça nous ramène à l'essence même de la radio publique, qui est la radio de Radio-Canada, de Radio One, à Espace Musique en passant par la première. La prospérité, la richesse de notre radio, à nous, elle se mesure par la richesse de nos programmes, par l'engagement des artisans qui la font, par la conversation qu'on réussit à établir entre ceux et celles qui nous écoutent. Et là, j'en reviens un peu à ce contexte dans lequel vous situez la question. Dans l'univers des nouvelles technologies, moi, je pense, and I don't know what you think of that, je pense, moi, que la conversation devient encore plus intéressante et plus dynamique avec les nouvelles technologies. Les réseaux sociaux nous permettent de discuter en direct constamment avec nos auditeurs. La balado-diffusion, on en parlait dans la vidéo qu'on a montrée, elle permet ce que le magnétoscope permettait à la télévision depuis 30 ans, d'avoir accès à un contenu radio au moment que ça nous intéresse. Auparavant, si on ratait Classe économique ou l'heure du monde à 18 h, c'était fait, c'était final. On peut s'abonner à la balado maintenant, l'avoir sur son téléphone et l'écouter pendant qu'on roule, qu'on a une longue distance à faire sur l'autoroute, l'écouter dans le métro et tout ça. Donc, moi, je pense qu'elle prospère encore plus grâce aux nouvelles technologies, la radio.
And I want to pick up on what Jean-Sébastien is saying with you, Matt. In television, we're looking over at what's happening on the internet as it's a huge threat to what we do. People are turning towards YouTube to get their information rather than turning to a nightly newscast. In the print medium, of course, they're seeing the same thing. The newspapers, losing their audiences to what's happening online. I want to get your perspective, though, from how the internet and all that social media, does it compete with you? Is it a challenge to you? Or is it, as Jean-Sébastien is mentioning here, enhancing a bit of what you can do?
I think you have to be smart enough to understand that it is, and be humble enough to understand that it is competition. People can listen to anything in the morning. That they choose to listen to a program that I host is humbling and extraordinary and overwhelming, but it's one thing that they could listen to. They could listen to a number of radio stations, they could listen to the podcasts you were talking about, they could listen to satellite radio, they could listen to nothing at all. So you have to create things that will, in that space, compete, and in that space be relevant and important and must-hear radio. At the same time, you have to not fear that technology. Our program uses things like Twitter and Facebook as the show is going out on the air. So Hubert was talking about radio used to be a conversation. There would be your announcer at the microphone and the audience, and the voice would come out through the radio and that would be it. We now have this opportunity to communicate with people, not just one-to-one, not just two-to-one, but our show is like this live conversation where 30 or 40 people at the same time are talking about things that we're talking about, that are carrying on their own conversations about something that we've started. And if you can figure out a way to harness that technology and enhance the conversation so that, yes, when we're on the air from 5:30 to 8:30, it's this lively discussion. But when we go off the air and when the city really starts to thrive and something happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we can still be part of that discussion. I can be involved in that, other people can be involved in it, and it takes on a life of its own. We have a thing, just because I ride my bicycle to work in the morning, where we started giving bike reports on the radio. We have traffic reports, we have weather reports. We thought, what if we, and this came from a listener, what if we gave bike reports, a cycling report, and it lived online? So people could crowdsource that information, and on Twitter, there's this hashtag, MMBike, that now exists outside of the show. And it's the place that people go to find out whether this road is blocked, whether it's going to rain and you're going to need, pants that repel water at the end of the day, whether your socks are going to get soaked, or whether it's a beautiful day and you know what, you're tired and lazy, but you should get out and ride your bike to work. That has nothing to do with us other than we created it and sort of launched it into the ether. And that, to me, is kind of the power of technology on a show like ours. We're a radio program. We're not broadcasting on the internet, but in a way, you can use that to be broadcasting on the internet at the same time.
Mark vient de le dire, en télévision, on le sent très bien, les nouvelles technologies, Internet, c'est une menace finalement, une menace en termes de code d'écoute notamment. Et il faudra que la télévision s'adapte à ça et elle cherche à le faire. La radio cherche à s'adapter aussi, mais on n'a pas l'impression, on a moins l'impression que c'est une menace. Et Matt vient de le dire, il y a tout un espace qui est créé pour la discussion en radio. Rebecca, est-ce que la radio change? Est-ce que la radio doit s'adapter à ces nouvelles technologies? Est-ce que ça change votre travail? Est-ce que ça change le travail des artisans?
C'est drôle, moi j'ai tendance à être surtout pessimiste, mais à dire que je suis réaliste, puis à penser que oui, c'est une menace, puis comment on peut faire. Je n'avais pas l'impression que la radio prospérait, j'ai l'impression que la radio survit, mais je fais la nuance. Tant qu'il y a un noyau, un bassin de fidèles auditeurs, et c'est pas nécessairement une génération vieillissante, mais qui existe, qui en a un peu rien à cirer des réseaux sociaux ou de découvrir la musique ailleurs qu'en écoutant la radio ou de s'informer en écoutant le radio-journal. Mais ce bassin, ce noyau dur-là, donc il y a encore des rendez-vous télévisuels ou radiophoniques qui lit le journal le matin. Je pense que la radio peut survivre grâce à ça, mais depuis que la radio est entrée dans l'ère numérique, je pense qu'elle ne peut qu'avancer. Ça serait vraiment se mettre la tête dans le sable, d'essayer de freiner cet élan-là. On n'y peut rien, donc on s'adapte. Et moi, je trouve ça formidable parce que cette ère numérique-là, elle est synonyme de liberté pour vous, en fait, pour les auditeurs. Justement, on l'a répété souvent ici, Hubert l'a mentionné tantôt, parce que cette nouvelle génération, c'est un défi générationnel, je pense, cette nouvelle génération qui représente donc une nouvelle clientèle ne veut pas se faire dicter la manière, l'heure, quand, où et comment elle va consommer de la radio. C'est elle qui décide. Donc, on doit s'adapter à elle. Elle a envie d'écouter des web radios. Ça, c'est nouveau depuis vraiment pas très longtemps. Nous, on en a beaucoup sur Espace Musique. Si au contraire, ils veulent juste un mélange de musique, de chansons par thème, sans contenu parlé, ça, c'est disponible. Le fait que la radio, maintenant, est diffusée également sur Internet, moi, ça fait que je reçois des courriels, des tweets aussi de gens qui m'écoutent en Argentine, de gens qui m'écoutent à Sudbury, des gens qui m'écoutent en Europe. Ça me surprend toujours d'avoir des courriels d'ailleurs, mais je me dis, ah oui, c'est vrai, c'est plus la radio terrestre, c'est pas obligé d'être à Montréal, même si mon émission est diffusée exclusivement dans la grande région de Montréal. Donc, tout ça, tout ce qui leur permet aussi de s'identifier, parce que on l'a dit, c'est un radio de proximité, you called it the hot medium. On peut s'identifier aussi avec les blogs, avec les podcasts, avec les web radios. Et pour moi, les réseaux sociaux, c'est vraiment ce qui ont... Moi, je suis arrivée à Radio-Canada à peu près en 2008. Je me suis, je pense, inscrite sur Twitter en 2009. Et depuis ce temps-là, j'ai 25 000 abonnés. Moi, je trouve ça pas pire. Je suis à peu près 700 comptes. Et les réseaux sociaux, comme le disait Matt, on peut faire comme s'ils n'existaient pas. Mais pour moi, c'est vraiment complémentaire à mon travail. Pas juste à mon travail d'animatrice radio, mais vraiment mon travail de journaliste, d'animatrice. Moi, je l'utilise vraiment comme un fil de nouvelles. J'ai choisi Personally, I don't follow TMZ. I don't care if you do, c'est le fun pour vous. Mais pour moi, je m'abonne au Parisien, au Monde, à l'Express, peu importe, au Washington Post, à CBC Music, à des gens qui m'intéressent, des acteurs, des comédiens, des politiciens. Et le matin, quand j'arrive en onde à 8h30, je regarde mon fil Twitter et je prends, je dirais, la moitié de mon contenu, de ce que je vais vous raconter sur Twitter. Mais le contenu, je pense que c'est ce qui restera toujours roi. Peu importe ce qui se passe avec les nouvelles technologies, c'est vraiment... ça revient un peu au talent de la personne qui est devant le micro, qui a le privilège d'être devant le micro et qui a quelque chose à dire, à raconter, et le talent de le communiquer aussi. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, she's got a follow-up question. She's butting in line to me, but allez-y.
Okay. C'est intéressant parce qu'on parle beaucoup de la radio numérique, des nouvelles technologies, d'Internet, comme si tout ça était nouveau. C'est pas exactement nouveau. Et Rebecca, vous le disiez, il y a encore une partie de la population qui lit le journal et qui écoute les émissions à l'heure où les émissions sont diffusées. Et c'est très bien comme ça. Mais est-ce qu'on sait donc qui est le public cible maintenant de cette nouvelle façon de faire? Les gens qui suivent les réseaux sociaux, les gens qui écoutent les émissions davantage sur balado-diffusion, ils ont quel âge? Ils viennent d'où? Qui sont-ils? Est-ce que vous avez du feedback là-dessus? Est-ce que vous savez qui ils sont?
Qui veut répondre?
Non. Moi, je ne sais pas. Je sais que nos patrons, il y a des gens dans la boîte qui regardent ça. Ils font des études de marché. Mais je vais employer un véritable cliché là, en radio. Mais quand je parle à la radio, moi, je parle à une seule personne. Mm-hmm. Et j'espère que les gens qui nous écoutent ont l'impression que je ne parle qu'à eux, personnellement, un peu comme s'ils avaient décroché le téléphone quand ça a sonné. Et « Allô, j'ai une histoire à te raconter. » Parce que j'entends énormément de versions contradictoires. Moi, j'entends dire que les jeunes, en réalité, ne sont pas sur Twitter. Que Twitter, en réalité, c'est les attachés politiques, des attachés de presse, des journalistes, des news junkies qui sont là-dessus. Moi, c'est ce que j'entends. Les jeunes vont sur Facebook. Ils vont sur Facebook pas pour s'abonner à la page d'une émission de radio. Ils vont sur Facebook pour se parler entre amis, pour avoir du fun entre eux. Alors, je sais qu'on a des pages Facebook qui prospèrent. L'émission du matin, l'émission d'après-midi à Montréal, ici Radio-Canada Première, ont énormément d'abonnés. Les comptes Twitter aussi. Écoutez, on a des animateurs, des personnalités qui ont 60 000, 80 000 abonnés Twitter. Je suis loin de ça encore. Alors, je ne sais pas. Mais je suis d'accord avec ce que Matt disait, qu'il y a une compétition, et avec ce que Rebecca disait. Remarquez que moi, je vous dirais que Rebecca, qui se voulait très pessimiste au début de son intervention, en réalité, nous a démontré par tout ce qu'elle nous a dit qu'au fond, elle est optimiste. Dans le fond, ça ne va pas si mal que ça, moi, quand je l'écoute. Mais moi, c'est pire. Mon émission, là, elle est à 6 heures de l'après-midi, en même temps que The World at 6 on Radio 1. Moi, non seulement, je pourrais dire les médias sociaux, les nouveaux médias et la compétition Internet, ça me fait compétition, mais ça vient même vider mon contenu. J'aurais pu penser ça, parce que maintenant, les nouvelles, vous les avez sur votre téléphone cellulaire. Alors moi, si j'arrive à 6 heures du soir pour vous faire un bilan de la journée, vous allez aller ailleurs, vous allez fermer la radio, vous allez se dire, non, j'ai tout lu ça sur mon téléphone, j'ai tout lu ça sur ma tablette. On doit ajouter maintenant, donner un sens à ces nouvelles qu'on peut lire sur un téléphone, leur donner un sens, les mettre en contexte, en racontant des histoires et en faisant entendre les voix des gens qui se retrouvent dans ces histoires-là sur papier ou sur un écran électronique.
I want to pick up on a point, and it's something we talk about often in the media, which is know your audience. When I'm looking out at our audience that we have here at the Glenn Gould Studio here in Toronto today. And what's amazing is the age range, and I find that incredibly encouraging because, of course, we always like to see that sort of span, those demographics, young people especially who are coming out and really want to be part of the conversation and are connecting with us, and that's crucial for our future. But it's interesting, you know, here in this building, we always talk about CBC Radio as the senior service, because it is. But that can go the wrong way, and you can understand how that can sort of be twisted to say it was just for seniors. And certainly what we're hearing up here, that's not the case. But Steve, I want to ask you that there does seem to be this notion of nostalgia about radio, that I don't see the same thing for TV. And I wonder how much you, as much as there are these new technologies that we're talking about, how you have to know your audience and respect the fact that there is that nostalgia for radio that I don't think exists in TV.
Sorry, Mark, I'm just having your question translated back into French and then back into English. I just felt that was the politically correct way to do this. And on Channel 3 is the Debaters, which is playing right now on the East Coast.
He's not going to answer.
I mean, I've been doing the Debaters for 7 years now on the radio. We had a little stint on television, and what I can tell you the difference from my perspective as someone that's done a bit of both is you treasure radio. There's nowhere to hide in radio. The content, in my opinion, has to be stronger. The words have to be stronger because you can't rely on anything else around it. So I think the reason that more nostalgia would be created is because the content's better. There's more competition, of course, everywhere. I'm not sure that all the kids are on Facebook. I know I love Twitter as a joke writing exercise, and sure. And we get feedback all the time from people, and we're a show that airs weekly but tapes not weekly. And Hubert's been kind enough to come out to a lot of tapings. We have an immediate connection with our people. They'll let us know immediately if we've. It's a lot of grammar that I get corrected on. Thanks, listeners.
Oh yeah, CBC listeners and viewers are very good on the grammar front. I'm sure it's the same for Radio-Canada as well. You make a mistake, boom.
Oui.
Twitter is helpful for that too.
Et c'est très bien. C'est très bien comme ça.
They sometimes forget it's a joke. So, but a short answer to your question would be, I think nostalgia is created by quality content, and I think you have to have more quality in your words on radio than you do on television. With no offense to television, but we're
no offense taken, but thank you.
All right.
But the amazing thing is you do see people who are listening to radio who've never listened to radio before now because of technology. So we have people who listen to our program who are all over the world, as you have, who are here, who are out running in the morning, who are on the streetcar, who are with their dog, who listen to us later on in the day because they're interested in the city that they're in, and who come from the entire swath of this city. I mean, I broadcast to a city that is incredibly multicultural, and part of our success is trying to figure out how to tell all of those stories at the same time back to the city. And so we had an event in this building as part of Citizenship Week earlier this week in which there were new Canadians and people who were about to become Canadians. As of today, they were becoming Canadian citizens. And they were telling stories of how they were in Korea, in South Korea, listening to Metro Morning to learn English before they came here. That when they arrived and they were doing ESL classes, our program was played as a way, and this is again concerning given the grammar police, as a way to learn the language, but also learn the kind of informal customs of the city. And when you understand that audience is enormous and the potential is there, you can't be pessimistic at all. You have to be optimistic that if you can figure out the stories and you can figure out the content and you can figure out a way to reach people in a meaningful way, people will always give you their time if you can promise something and deliver on that promise. And that's what we try and do. And I think the result is success, but it also is just the strength of a medium that a lot of people thought would die on a vine and hasn't yet.
Anna Marie?
I wonder, when we talk about social media and people who get so consumed by working through their communications through Twitter or Facebook or on their computers, and we also know that people can sometimes feel disconnected. And what radio does is it gives you that voice. No matter where you actually access it from, it's a human voice. And so it kind of transcends that disconnect. We both use the social media, but we then transcend that kind of thing. And we're talking about people hearing you from all over. I have to say I've lived in several countries for the CBC as a foreign correspondent, and I have to say our production values are really high. So suddenly the very thing that can hurt us, that anything is available anytime, anywhere, and you have all that competition, also helps us because we have a real tradition of taking the time to do the job right in the CBC. And I'm not just being self-serving here, but I really think that when I look at the colleagues I've worked with over many years, the production values of what we do, of trying to get it right on every single level, that comes through in all of the podcasts and all of that kind of thing, so that suddenly you can hear it elsewhere. When I was a kid on a Sunday afternoon, if I was in the car with my parents, there were a whole bunch of BBC shows. I'm sorry, I'll read that again. I'm really dating myself now. The Curse of the Hairy Wombat and all these crazy comedy shows. Do you know about these? Anyway,
The Curse of the Hairy Wombat's a totally different thing.
You've got to get there, yeah. But the point was, we had access to just a few little things that were hilarious. Right. And I'm the daughter of an immigrant, right? And it was also the English language and all of that. Well, now our shows can go out there everywhere. The debaters can be anywhere on the planet, and people can laugh at it. It's funnier than the Curse of the Hairy Wombat, you know? So
I'm going to put that on our show poster.
but it is about that connection again, and throughout all that technology, you still have to get the story. You still have to tell the story, and you make the connection through your voice. And something as simple as a voice is, what do people do? They sing to babies. I mean, you put the voice matters. And we're still there.
C'est très important ce que Anna-Marie vient de dire, human voice, la voix, parce que je pense que dans l'univers numérique, on doit faire une distinction entre l'avenir de la radio parlée, talk radio, et la radio musicale. Et en ce sens-là, le défi auquel fait face Rebecca, il est encore plus grand que celui qu'on a on Radio One ou à ici Radio-Canada Première, parce que la voix, une machine ne peut pas remplacer ça. La chaleur humaine, la vérité, l'authenticité de la voix, enthusiasm in a voice. Ça, l'électronique ne peut pas remplacer ça. Mais si j'étais le patron d'une radio musicale de style... Non, mais... oui, bonjour. De style top 40, les hits, là, je serais un peu nerveux. Si ce n'était que ça, jouer des hits à la radio. Parce que ça, Internet est un compétiteur vorace. Vous pouvez maintenant avoir accès à des chaînes musicales sans animateur, sans publicité. Vous choisissez votre titre. Ben, on l'offre nous-mêmes.
Bien, c'est pour ça que je disais que le contenu sur espace.mu, dans notre cas, ou CBC Radio Music, doit être complémentaire.
Voilà. Alors, nous, en radio, on doit aller plus loin que simplement de raconter une nouvelle. On doit lui donner un sens. Mais ce que vous faites à Espace Musique et ce qui se fait à Radio 2, c'est extraordinaire parce qu'il y a des captations d'événements. Vous ajoutez, il y a une valeur ajoutée.
Il y a une valeur ajoutée qui se trouve sur le web. C'est de la seule façon, je pense, qu'on peut se battre.
À la radio, vous ne faites pas seulement jouer des disques.
Non, il y a des entrevues, il y a des... Puis ça revient au contenu, ce que je disais. Ça revient à ce que la personne qui est devant le micro doit dire. Si on fait juste faire le trafic entre une chanson puis une autre, c'est plate. Vous pouvez écouter votre iPod à la place ou peu importe votre iPhone. Mais ce que Mme Tremonti disait aussi, c'est intéressant, c'est parce qu'il faut faire attention de ne pas cannibaliser le contenu non plus, parce qu'à un moment, il y en a tellement, l'offre est tellement grande. Parce qu'on peut aller sur espace.mu et écouter 3 chansons du nouvel album de choses. Oui, j'ai entendu Rebecca en parler. Je vais écouter l'entrevue aussi, ou je vais écouter des extraits de l'entrevue qui a été montée à votre convenance, parce que vous ne voulez pas vous taper le 9 minutes au complet, mais vous voulez juste la citation où Louis-Jean Cormier, pour ne nommer que celui-là, parle, je ne sais pas moi, de son prix gagné à la disque. Donc, il faut faire attention parce que la valeur ajoutée peut cannibaliser notre contenu. Moi, je trouve c'est pour ça que tantôt, je disais que j'étais peut-être pessimiste, réaliste, que je...
We're talking a lot about the competition that's out there now in the world of technology and how you have to harness that competition and use it to enhance your product. But Matt, I want to ask you a crass question just about competition. You've got competition in this city, a whole bunch of it.
So I'm told.
And you are on the top of the heap, which is something that's worth celebrating. And I just wonder, when you look at that competition, that all want to be number one in this city, I mean, this is the city where you want to be number one. When you look at your position there, how do you explain why you have got there and the others are still struggling to get there?
It's a good question. I think one of the things that we do really well is something that I was just talking about, which is actually, and there's a tagline that's on some of the promos that we have, which is sounding like the city. It sounds obvious, but it's true. That in this city, particularly if you're the public broadcaster, but if you're any broadcaster, if you can be on the subway or the streetcar and you see the United Nations there and you don't see that represented in what you're broadcasting, then if you're the public broadcaster, you should be out of business, I think. If you are a private broadcaster, you need to worry about who your audience is. We represent the public, and the public is this huge, as I said, this huge swath. And so what we, through a lot of work, and very deliberate work in terms of hiring, but also in terms of the story choices from the meetings that I was at this morning about what's going to be on the program in the days and weeks ahead, to the people that we have on, not the usual suspects in terms of guests, we really try and go out of our way to reflect what the city sounds like now. Not what the city sounded like 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, but what it sounds like now. And the best possible compliment is that you hear back from people who say, I was in a taxi with a driver during the Arab Spring. We were talking a lot about Egypt. He said, I would have never thought that the CBC would talk about Egypt, that this is my story, but it's actually your story and it's our story. And that means a lot because it makes the we, in terms of what we are trying to do, much more inclusive. So we work really hard at trying to do that. We're lucky in that we're a commercial-free service. We're not selling you soap. We're not going to give you a plane ticket to Mexico. We're not going to try and drive you to a certain advertiser. And so audiences have this different relationship with you. We're not trying to drive them to anybody else. They're looking to us for content. And if we can get them, steal 5-10 minutes of their time and get them to listen a little bit more about the city or the world that they're in, it's incredibly rewarding when they do that, and when they do that in overwhelming ways. So it's a nice mix, but it's really a lot of hard work as well in trying to actually reflect the place that we're in right now.
Je pense qu'on peut poser la même question à Jean-Sébastien et Rebecca. Comment on se hisse au sommet d'un marché comme celui de Montréal? Comment on y arrive? Quelle est la qualité?
On suit l'exemple de Matt.
Bonne idée.
On essaie d'être aussi bon que lui. C'est très clair, mais quelque chose que Matt disait, effectivement, pas s'en tenir aux invités les plus évidents, les plus convenus. Pourquoi ne pas aller au-delà? Pourquoi pas se surprendre? Et je ne dis pas tomber dans la gratuité, là, dans le freak show, pas du tout. Je ne pensais pas entendre parler d'Égypte à CBC Radio-Canada. Mais c'est incroyable d'entendre ça quand même. Et heureusement qu'on est là pour le faire, parce qu'effectivement, le pays est tellement rendu multiculturel, puis ça l'est déjà depuis des années, mais plus que jamais, on doit faire ça. Moi, ce que j'aime de la nouvelle émission que j'anime, L'heure du monde, c'est que je peux compter sur la force du réseau. Alors, depuis le début de la saison déjà, on va dans toutes les communautés au pays, de la plus petite à la plus grosse. Si vous saviez les histoires qui sortent de là, c'est incroyable. C'est incroyable. On se fait surprendre. On apprend parfois que ce qui se vit à Montréal, bien, ça se vit à plus petite échelle peut-être, mais dans une ville comme Lloydminster, entre l'Alberta et la Saskatchewan, que Toronto a des problèmes qui peuvent se comparer à, bien sûr, ce qui se vit à Vancouver, mais aussi à Montréal. On va dans les communautés culturelles, puis un jour, on ne dira même plus ça, cette expression-là, communauté culturelle. Hein? On va dire tout simplement, on va dans la population. Et puis, ben voilà, Rebecca, toi, qu'est-ce que tu en penses?
C'est drôle parce que moi, je me disais que ça, c'est un atout aussi du diffuseur public, c'est qu'on est vraiment diffusé d'un océan à l'autre, from coast to coast. Je veux dire, c'est une richesse. Et le fait de pouvoir être diffusé partout au pays, de pouvoir s'adapter aux particularités de chaque population, pour ne pas dire communauté aussi, justement, et d'offrir, c'est plus qu'un service, en fait, c'est une responsabilité que Radio-Canada a d'offrir un contenu qui est moins relié que les radios commerciales, on va se le dire, au code d'écoute ou encore au contenu publicitaire. Ça fait qu'on peut encore plus se concentrer sur le contenu. Puis moi, je pense vraiment que c'est ça la clé du succès, puis la clé de la survie, puis la seule façon de prospérer, c'est vraiment, on le dit de façon différente, Matt tantôt en parlait, c'est du travail, mais c'est aussi, c'est le contenu. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour vous proposer quelque chose que vous n'allez pas entendre ailleurs, que vous allez syntoniser CBC ou Radio-Canada ou Espace Musique parce que vous ne l'avez pas ailleurs? C'est pas exactement sur le web. Je veux vraiment, c'est là que je veux aller, c'est parce que c'est la seule place où je peux retrouver ça finalement.
It sounds like so much work.
What did you say?
It sounds like so much work, everything you're doing. You know, you get the feeling. But so that's why, Steve, I wanted to give you the last word on our panel because your show doesn't sound like a lot of work.
That's fine. I'll take that. I can take that from him.
We have history, people.
Kelly.
We have
he's
history.
A Kelly. He's an Irish. He's a son of a. We actually are fortunate enough on Debaters to get to travel around with our show throughout Canada. We get to see that connection. We actually make a point of hiring local comedians, which might not otherwise get exposure to the rest of Canada, and talking about topics, which I know it's not, a news format that we give it, but we talk about topics that matter to places, different parts of Canada. We happen to make it funny, but there's always some facts in there, and that's the way that we connect, is we travel around. I'm very fortunate to have a radio show with a live listening audience that's a theater in a town, and I think it's pretty worthwhile, Mark.
I love that line, and there's always some facts in there.
There's facts.
You just let the secret out.
There's fact stuff.
All right, well, listen, that wraps up this fantastic panel conversation. I'd like to thank you all for sharing your experience and insights with us. And before we begin answering the questions from the public, and this is the moment we had mentioned before, we are going to invite questions from the floor. You can see right now a microphone is being set up. We have been encouraging people to send us questions via email, Twitter. We are receiving those as we speak. I would like to invite the bosses back on stage in case you have, and I imagine you will, perhaps some questions for them. Okay. Let's start, actually, we've got, as I mentioned, we've got some questions that are coming in via email. So Anna Maria, we've got one for you. I'm trying to see where this one came from. So anyway, it is, what is the most fascinating interview, Anna Maria, you have done in the past 6 months?
Oh, Malala Yousafzai.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, you know, every once in a while you meet someone, I'm so lucky to meet so many people, but who just seems to be on another level. And I didn't know, we had heard about her, we'd actually put tape of her on the air before she was shot. And then, you know, before I read the book, I was wondering, okay, what's she like? Then I read the book, and it's a very, like, true to her voice book. It's an amazing story. And, you know, she has a dad who's very much advocating for all of this education, and you know, some call him a stage dad, but she also has a mind of her own. And after finishing talking to her, I really understood that. And when the cameras stopped rolling and we turned off the mics, I said to her, you know, Malala, I wonder if, you know, because she's a kid from the Swat Valley, remember? Like, this is very far away from the rest of the world. And I said, I wonder if, even if your father hadn't been such an advocate for education, even if you hadn't been so outspoken and this hadn't happened to you, that somewhere in your life you might have punched through and made a difference. And she looked at me, she's just a tiny little thing, and she looks at me and she goes, perhaps when I was older. An amazing young woman, just amazing.
Avant de continuer un peu plus loin, il faut quand même rappeler que pour transmettre toute question relative à ce que vous venez d'entendre, que ce soit l'intention d'Hubert, de Rémi, de Suzanne, de nos panélistes, de nos personnalités CBC Radio-Canada, vous pouvez compléter la section à cet effet au bas de votre écran. Vous pouvez aussi nous transmettre vos questions par Twitter au mot-clic RCAPA et hashtag CBCAPM. En anglais. On va prendre également les questions soumises déjà par vidéo.
Of course, we did want to invite people to ask questions, and I can see that people are already lining up. That's fantastic. We may not be able to answer all the questions. We'll do our best to do that with the time that we have. We will answers to the most frequently asked questions will be posted on our corporate website later. You've got another email question.
Pour Rebecca, alors voici la question. Rebecca, on vous voit sur un certain nombre de plateformes. On dirait que c'est la voie de l'avenir. Est-ce que c'est par choix ou est-ce qu'on vous l'a demandé? Est-ce réaliste de penser que tous les journalistes peuvent être aussi bons sur toutes les plateformes?
Was I chosen to be the voice of the future, Hubert?
Tantôt que tu étais la personne
la plus multiplateforme. Merci d'abord à la personne qui a posé une question. J'avais tellement peur d'être ignorée. Non, c'est une blague. Je dirais que c'est un concours de circonstances. En fait, moi, quand j'ai commencé à étudier le journalisme, j'ai un bac en journalisme à Concordia. Je voulais faire de la télé ou de la presse écrite. La radio, ça ne m'intéressait pas du tout. J'ai peut-être un peu honte de le dire maintenant. Ouais, je sais, c'est ridicule, mais je trouvais que c'était un peu ennuyant. Puis je trouvais comment on peut, en fait, raconter une histoire sans images. Écoutez, pessimiste. But I was young, right? I was young. I was just getting into university. Et là, j'ai commencé à travailler à la Gazette. Ensuite, je suis plus une fille de télé, en fait. Et c'est arrivé par un concours de circonstances. Quand j'ai commencé à animer Studio 12 il y a 4 ans, c'était vraiment une idée de la direction. OK, on va faire une émission multiplateforme. Ça va être diffusé à la télé. Le lendemain de la diffusion, ça va être disponible sur le web. Et c'est une émission dont la création était assurée. C'est une émission qui a été créée, en fait, à la radio. Donc là, je me suis retrouvée un peu partout. Puis aussi, j'ai beaucoup parlé de défis générationnels. J'ai l'âge que j'ai. Donc moi, je suis arrivée... Pour moi, la radio, le 75e anniversaire, on parlait de nostalgie un petit peu plus tôt. Moi, je ne suis pas nostalgique par rapport à la radio. Je suis nostalgique par rapport à la télé parce que j'ai l'âge que j'ai. Et c'est arrivé comme ça. Je suis arrivée en même temps que Twitter. Je ne suis pas du tout Facebook, mais je suis très Twitter. Puis ça fait en sorte que quand j'anime, soit à la télévision ou à la radio, je m'arrange pour tweeter dans les pauses, à la télé, en direct. Des fois, ça impressionne les gens. Mais voyons donc, t'as pas du contenu. Mais Girls can multitask also. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Mais je trouve que maintenant, quand on est journaliste, hey girls, maintenant quand on est journaliste, on n'a pas le choix en fait. Il faut s'assurer, peut-être pas d'être expert, mais d'essayer de maîtriser le plus possible, d'être multiplateforme, vraiment de pouvoir être aussi habile à la télé qu'à la radio que sur le web. C'est ce que je souhaite en tout cas aux journalistes.
You go, girl. You go. Wow.
Hey,
Very impressive. Okay, and I asked for your patience just for one more second. We do have video questions that were submitted, and this is one that's for Hubert, so I'd just like to throw to that video question now, please.
How come you don't have Hockey Night in Canada on cell phones available? I'd like to watch it on my smartphone.
Yeah, how come?
Yeah.
Mark, do this again. He wants to
watch. He wants to watch Hockey Night in Canada on his smartphone, his cell phone.
Well, that's an easy one. We are actually streaming live Hockey Night in Canada on your computer, so you can watch us every Saturday evening. And if you go to your provider, your cell phone provider, we actually do the same thing. I think there's a paywall, though, depending on the provider, well, on all the providers, but we also do that on your cell phone. So we're happy in this first question, so it's an easy question, probably just a softball. Yeah, we do it right now.
We do it. He asked for it, boom, you delivered it like that. That's how we roll around here, people.
D'autres questions?
And on that note, let's go to the floor as everybody takes a deep breath. Yes, sir.
Broadening our conversations. CBC more than lives here. It literally saved my life one February morning when Pauline Dankin did her health report on Neurontin and Gaber Painton. My kids thank you. My wife thanks you. My community thanks you. Today back then I started the Institute for Canadian Justice. The Fifth Estate has done 2 associated pieces, and we've revealed Canada's largest governmental privacy breach in the course of doing this. You folks are beacons. You create that national dialogue, that tapestry. You are the thread to that tapestry that binds us all, and thank you so much for that. My question is this. In an emerging technologies, platforms, and demographics, and the democratic discourse considered, it is critical that online presence, the two-way conversation, is covered by the CBC Ombudsman. What good folks like I and others are finding is that when we do go online to comment, we are either being moderated to a degree that is unreasonable, or others are getting ahead of the queue and spewing all kinds of nastiness. That two-way dialogue is very, very critical to all of us, because in broadening those conversations, we have an amazing discourse. And if I may add, and end on this point, harness and enhance, as Matt said, this incredible discourse. More of these is a great way to start. And thank you, and please remember, my family thanks you so very much. Thank you.
I think, if I may, that, and it was very eloquent, thank you, that the heart of that, your question, though, was about the Ombudsman, and you're talking about just trying to, that you are being over-moderated as you try to get points to, is that the heart of your question? A yes or no would be great, just in interest of time. I'm not trying to cut you off. Thank you.
So moderation is always a question, particularly on the web. We have policies that deal with that. We try to ensure that the nastiness or the foul words are not shown. We don't post those. It's always a question of balance. When a person, let's go with the ombudsman position or the ombudsman role, when a person is not happy with the way we treated the story or what, as you know, you have the right to complain. The news department reacts to it. When you're still unhappy with the reaction or the answer of the news department, then you have obviously a right to the ombudsman. The ombudsman is a position that reports directly to me. We take great pride in the work of the ombudsman because they are the conscience of the corporation. They also are a great way to show our transparency and our accountability. So yes, we understand moderation is always in the eye of the person that wanted the post and got his or her post deleted. We have policies for that. It's a constant conversation, and they will evolve as we see these mediums change.
Merci, Hubert. And in the spirit of moderation and just out of respect for people here, let's try to keep questions as brief as we can so that we can try to broaden our platform here to get more questions from the floor. So, sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name's Philip Savage, and I teach at McMaster University, where we have a new, I was going to say CBC radio station. We don't have any radio. That's another matter that we can investigate some other time, I hope. I want to thank you for having such a meeting and for, as Matt has mentioned and Hubert has mentioned, being so transparent. Your competitor down the road, Bell Media, doesn't have such events. In fact, rather than gathering questions from its users, it seems to be gathering information against our will. So I hope at some point Bell will also address some of these questions. My question is about Radio 2 and advertising. Matt said, we do what we do because we're not just sending people to advertisers. He used to work on Radio 2 a little bit. He doesn't work on Radio 2 anymore. In the interest of transparency, the CRTC has asked the CBC, first of all, to limit its advertising on Radio 2 beyond what it, or well below what it had actually planned. It also suggested that within 3 years you report on the impact on programming and the actual financials. In the interest of transparency, Monsieur Lacroix, and also our CFO sitting up here, would you be willing to have a public audited statement about the amount of revenue that is being generated through advertising on Radio 2, I won't speak to Espace Musique, perhaps for Espace Musique as well, that is made available at this public meeting in terms of the actual monies generated and also the cost of generating those revenues. Would you pledge to do that at the next annual public meeting? Thank you.
There's a lot in your question. Let me try to do this, and if Suzanne thinks I've forgotten something, she can chime in. We actually told the CRTC how many dollars we wanted. We wanted 8 minutes of advertising. We're just about gradually getting to 8 minutes. That would have given us about $20 million of contribution, between 20 and just a little more than 20. We got 4 minutes, so you can do the math. You can do the math. It's going to generate about $10 million, let's say between $7 or $10 million, a little less in the first year because we're late in starting it. It took us some time. We thought that the decision was going to come earlier. All that to say, we're looking at, or let's say around $10 million on a cruising speed out of a $20 million target, 4 minutes an hour. We've started the ads on radio right now. And frankly, the tolerance and the engagement and the comments from the listening public has been okay.
And let me follow.
Say to Prime Minister Harper, you didn't answer the question. Will you provide on a yearly basis back to this public meeting an audited statement of the revenues you're generating through Radio 2 advertising?
We don't audit, sir, we'd be happy to give you the numbers. We don't audit particular streams of revenues. We have a $1.7 billion corporation. We have audited financial statements. We have quarterly MD&As. I'd be happy to, if you come back and you ask the question every year, I'll give you where we are with respect to the plan. And we actually report that to the CRTC. So there's no hiding this number. It's a contribution.
On it after 3 years, but will you be reporting it on a yearly basis to the public, including the cost
of that? Sure. Again, there's no hiding of this number. We asked Radio 2 and Espace Musique to contribute to the challenges that we have on a financial level, and that's the plan.
And including the cost.
Sir, we've got a lot of questions. Just in fairness here, we've got a lot of questions. Okay. Another one that's coming on this, and while we're on the topic, this is from John Burkham in Montreal to Hubert. Will you guarantee there will never be advertising on CBC Radio 1 and Première Chaîne?
Did you guys ask the question, or did it come actually from somebody in Montreal? Is it your brother or your sister or your friend?
Yeah, it's John Burkham in air quotes, also known as Steve Patterson.
We told the CRTC there's no ads coming on Radio 1 sur notre radio parlée pour exactement les raisons que Jean-Sébastien a discuté il y a quelques minutes. Parce que la richesse du contenu de la langue de notre radio parlée est différente. Il faut que cette relation-là continue. Et c'est pour ça qu'on a choisi de le faire sur nos deux radios musicales, différents environnements. On n'a aucune intention d'avoir de la publicité sur les ondes de ici Radio-Canada Première ou de Radio 1.
Steve, a question to you from Jason in Edmonton. Comedy can be a very visual art, so why do you think a show like The Debaters works just as well in front of a live audience as it does on the radio?
Well, Hubert's been to tapings. It's actually a little spicier in front of the live audience than makes it to the radio. But we keep as much as we can. But it's a great event to come out to. That's what we've made it, is an event to come out to the taping of. And that probably didn't answer the question. I'm just practicing for being a politician. I have to do the play-by-play, so it's taught me a different muscle of actually having to sort of explain the visuals of comedy and add little nuances with words, and it's actually made me a better comic for it. So.
And sometimes you feel you have to cut people off?
Sometimes
Thanks, Steve.
I do
That's
feel,
good.
Oh,
okay,
Kelly!
So,
Kelly!
let's go to this young lady on the floor.
Just 1 sec. I want to say something about the Debaters. Yes, I've been to a number of tapings, and it is true. The subject matters that are presented for debate actually come from what was in the paper last week. They give it a twist, but there's a true or false. There's does it make sense or not? And when they went to Bishops, there was a very important conversation about French and about French in Canada and some of the challenges that were going there. And it was debated in a very funny way, but the substance was extremely serious and well chosen.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. Thank you.
Please. Hi, my name's Katie. I'm a fourth-year RTA Radio and Television Arts student at Ryerson, hoping to one day end up here. My question for you is, as an advocate of getting people in my generation to listen to public radio, listen to the music that we play, just because everything here is so great, what do you guys plan on doing to attract a younger audience? Because sometimes it does seem like the senior network.
Ouch. Give it to Rebecca, she's young.
This is the face of it. J'allais répondre en anglais. Do you want me to answer? Maybe it's easier if I answer in English because you don't have your. I was going to say it comes down to a lot of the hosts are doing their own thing. I keep talking about Twitter, and I guess by now you're fed up of it. But to me, it really helped in, I think. You know how artists, they go on the road and they say, I gained my public one person at a time. I went on the road and I played my songs all across the country. And I really have a feeling that that's what I'm doing. Every day somebody on Twitter says, I didn't even know you were on the radio. I remember you from that TV show. Since when have you been on? Since about 1.5 years. Wow, this is cool. And it's like one person will tell another person, will tell another person, will tell another person. I also think that the CBC has to understand that it will need to, I guess, revitalize also their hosts. Because at some point, all the hosts that like, let's say, how can I say, oh man, I'm treading on thin water. You understand what I'm saying? Non, mais il y a une nouvelle génération d'animateurs, évidemment, people like you, one day are going to be standing here, and at some point, we're going to be, dead. So that's well said, isn't it?
It's that classic French romanticism we've been hearing about. I thought it was l'amour, not l'amour. Get it? It's love and death.
That's so funny. No, it's also your job to go and there you go.
Okay, so she passed it over to me. Let me help you also with this conversation because, are you happy that I did? Strategic planning. Our chairman, in his opening remarks, alluded to it. It's a very, very important part of what we're doing right now. We're in the middle of something called Strategy 2015, which obviously, because of its name, lands in 2015. But at one point in time, we are not going to stop and then say, all right, what's next? We are deep into the beyond 2015 strategic direction of the CBC and Radio-Canada. One of the things that we're looking at is obviously the 18 to 34 crowd, where I think that we have a blind spot. We need to better understand that those listeners, what they do, their consumption habits, and we're working very hard at it. So
and how to reach them.
And obviously, and how to reach them. we don't have the dollars to create the platforms, but we want to be on those platforms, so partnerships are very important in our lives. So the reach and trying to be relevant for you in the 18 to 34 range is much more than simply trying to figure out a particular program. It's about how can we create, and here we go again, this one-on-one relationship with you, so that it might not start with a television program. It might not come from listening to one of the podcasts. It might actually be you finding out on YouTube of a podcast of a cue. Let's say you watch Gian on YouTube, and then all of a sudden you said, that's interesting, and then you're going to find another way into the website, and then you're going to find something else about CBC Radio Canada. So this is our challenge.
It's pretty much what I said. Right?
You know, Hubert, you mentioned that there's something ubiquitous about Gian Gomeshi. He's on TV, he's on radio. It's almost like he's in this room now. Welcome, Gian. Okay, so we have, I hate to be the timekeeper, but that is part of my job here. We've got about 4 minutes left. We're going to try to squeeze in a few more questions. Why don't we, I know we've got some online, but sir, you're being patient, so let's take a question,
My
please.
name is Clinton Green. Mine is a panel. Mine is a statement, not a question.
A short one, I hope.
We're showing you the power of radio and freedom of listeners. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Matthew. Happy birthday to you.
Amazing voice.
I love that.
That was easy.
Great thing about radio is people can't see you when you blush. Thank you, sir.
It was very generous, and you've got great pipes, too.
Oh, yeah.
You may want to drop off a CV on your way out here. This is radio. Okay, let's quickly take one from online here. Arzu Suleiman. This is who sent this, and it's for Matt, the birthday boy. What are the characteristics of a good radio host?
The characteristics of a good radio host?
Correct.
Listening. I have a piece of paper that's on my desk in front of my microphone, and it says, "Stop talking." It's not always successful, but I think you have to listen, and you have to be curious, and you have to wonder if somebody is saying something, why they're saying something, and what the motivation is for them to come into a room and talk to a stranger like me to an audience of 1 million people in a city. Why would they want to do that, and what is in it for them? And if you can listen, and if you can get at the core of what it is that they're saying, or if it's often with a politician, what they're not saying, it will transmit a lot. So for me, it's just listening.
Oh, sorry, were you saying something?
Thank you.
Sir.
Yes, my name is Saeed, and Matt was saying people listen to his show to improve their English. I would say they are at very higher level of English because there are lots of other people that I know which need much more help into getting integrated and listening to CBC as the mainstream listenership does it. So my question is why we are not using the new technology to address that segment of listeners, why we don't have a special news bulletin which is using much limited vocabulary and giving more background on the stories, why we are not talking about the Canadian culture, history on shows that are specifically produced for the newcomers.
We have Radio-Canada International, RCI, that completely revamped its presence. If you go to the website, for example, and you see we broadcast in 5 different languages, and we changed it for exactly that reason. We used to invest dollars, and yes, it came as a result of asking ourselves in the context of cuts whether Radio-Canada International was still a relevant voice out there. It was broadcasting to the world. we said, all right, let's now focus focus our attention on the people that are in Canada or wanting to come to Canada and they want to understand our country. So can I suggest that you go to Radio-Canada International, and I think that you will get a lot of what you are referring to.
Je voudrais juste ajouter quelque chose. J'ai travaillé 3 ans à Saskatchewan et j'ai été frappé par le nombre d'anglophones ou d'allophones qui écoutaient la radio française exactement pour ça, not to learn English, but pour apprendre le français. Et là aussi, on se faisait dire aussi, parler du background du Canada, de l'histoire, parler un peu plus lentement pour qu'on vous suive, mais ils nous écoutaient aussi. Puis il faut retenir aussi que la radio française, c'est pas la radio des francophones, c'est le service public de langue française de tout le monde au pays.
Je peux confirmer qu'on vit ça aussi à Toronto, avec notre radio ici à Radio-Canada. Question pour Hubert de Jean Sauvé de Windsor. Quelles sont nos garanties de voir les dirigeants de Radio-Canada protéger les intérêts des régions lorsqu'on voit clairement la montréalisation des émissions et du réseau?
Alors, la montréalisation des ondes, je viens d'entendre Rebecca dire « c'est pas vrai ça ». Je comprends très bien la perception que certaines personnes ont de ce danger-là. J'ai entendu, parce que j'ai été assis devant le CRTC pendant 2 semaines en novembre 2012, les commentaires d'un grand nombre de Canadiens sur leur désir de voir plus d'histoires à travers le Canada livrées par nos services. Il y a eu une réaction immédiate des services français sous la direction de Louis Lalande, et ce qu'on a fait, c'est, on a un téléjournal maintenant qui est à peu près 7 jours sur 7 à travers le pays. On a des émissions de variété qui montrent, un air de famille par exemple, il y a une 20aine de familles qui sont là, ils sont de partout à travers le Canada. Alors non seulement dans les nouvelles, mais également dans les émissions de variété. Puis je vais terminer en vous disant que, par exemple, l'émission phare, l'émission de 22 heures, téléjournal de 22 heures de Céline, on a ajouté 2 journalistes, un à Edmonton et un autre à Moncton, pour encore une fois alimenter le téléjournal de 22 heures d'histoires pan-canadiennes pour connecter les gens ensemble.
Ou même Espace Musique. Il y a
Espace Musique.
Des animateurs un peu partout au pays. Justement, je parlais de Sudbury tantôt. Il y en a à Gatineau, il y en a à Vancouver, il y en a à Québec.
Ce que Rebecca dit, c'est qu'on a pris Espace Musique et on l'a régionalisé pour que vous puissiez entendre à Espace Musique la réalité des différentes communautés à la radio. Jean-Sébastien?
L'heure du monde aussi.
Tu peux en parler?
L'heure du monde, c'est exactement ce qu'on cherche à faire. D'ailleurs, moi, soit dit en passant, c'est vrai, je suis à Montréal, là, mais je ne le dis jamais, parce que je ne me considère pas, moi, être un animateur de Montréal quand j'anime l'heure du monde. Moi. Je suis l'animateur du monde. Alors, moi, je ne le dis jamais. J'ai des collègues qui vont me faire un reportage à Montréal. Je vais dire, lui, il nous parlait de Montréal. Mais moi, je ne dirais pas que je suis là, parce que quand je suis à Edmonton, je suis un animateur d'Edmonton. Quand on m'écoute à Québec, je suis un animateur de Québec. Quand je suis à Chicoutimi, je suis un animateur de Chicoutimi.
Alors,
très bien.
Mais je comprends très bien les préoccupations de cette personne-là. C'est quelque chose qu'on nous a reproché pendant longtemps. Absolument. Il faut être constamment sur nos gardes pour ne pas faire en sorte que ce soit l'impression qu'on donne à la radio, à la télévision ou sur les services qu'on rend.
Time is ticking. The earpiece in my ear is humming, so which means the people who are running the show are telling me. We've got one last question, and I apologize to the 2 people there from the floor. Please.
Just a comment. My name's Amanda Martinez. I'm a singer here in Toronto. Grew up with CBC, and I wanted to say thank you for all the support that you give artists whose music would not necessarily be on any other station. I feel personally indebted for my career here, and I know that I wouldn't have that. And on behalf of artists, I hope you continue to promote the diverse music that we have in the city. Thank you so much.
Well, that's the mandate. When we talk about the mandate of our musical radios, the Espace Musique et the Radio 2, that's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Hubert, I'm sure I'll let you handle this one. This is from Ron Devian in Brentwood Bay, BC. Hubert, what progress is being made on the Hockey Night in Canada negotiations with Gary Bettman?
Actually, that's one for Steve.
I'll take that one.
Yes. Hockey Night in Canada, you heard Suzanne a few minutes ago, key to our brand, important. We think we connect Canadians together on Saturday nights. It's been 61 years. We've been negotiating with the NHL through the leadership of Neil McEnany and Jeffrey Orridge. Conversations are ongoing, and we hope to hear in the near future of how they will conclude.
On a le temps de prendre une question, celle-ci de Bernard de Montréal. Elle est destinée à Jean-Sébastien. Jean-Sébastien, vous avez parlé des opportunités par rapport à l'engagement, participation dans les réseaux sociaux, du public dans vos activités de diffusion. J'aimerais vous entendre sur les risques. Donc, je comprends les risques associés à ce type de diffusion.
Bien, il y a eu des cas, tout d'abord, où on a des collègues qui ont dû faire amende honorable après s'être exprimés sur des médias sociaux. Oubliant peut-être que les médias sociaux, ben, c'est un micro, c'est une caméra, c'est une tribune publique comme n'importe où. Et je pense et je suis persuadé que Hubert serait d'accord et que tous les collègues ici seraient d'accord. L'un des éléments qui nous rend très, très fiers à Radio-Canada, CBC, ce sont nos normes et pratiques journalistiques. Alors, le risque pour le journaliste, c'est d'oublier, par exemple, qu'il est tenu sur les réseaux sociaux, sur Facebook, sur Twitter, au même devoir de réserve qu'il a lorsqu'il est devant une caméra ou devant un micro. Nous ne sommes pas là pour défendre un point de vue éditorial, pour défendre notre opinion personnelle quand on en a, parce que, soit dit en passant, je voudrais juste débattre une idée où souvent on dit « Comment tu fais pour cacher ton opinion? » Un animateur, souvent, là, la vie pour lui n'est faite que de teintes de gris. Et souvent, on n'a même pas d'opinion, parce qu'on entend tellement là, de versions des faits d'une même histoire et de points de vue différents qu'au fond, on est ouvert à tout, puis on oublie même qu'on a nous-mêmes à se forger une opinion. Enfin, moi, je fonctionne comme ça. Le risque aussi, je le vois sur... on peut se faire entraîner dans une escalade. On appelle ça les tweet fights. Là. Toi, mon experte en Twitter que tu es, tu sais... Non.
Oui,
tu sais,
je comprends,
que ça
absolument,
existe.
oui.
Bon, il y a le risque d'embarquer. Il faut résister à ça. Et je termine en disant... je ne suis pas encore tout à fait à l'aise, je vais vous l'avouer, avec le fait qu'on permette de commenter les textes de nouvelles constamment parce que je trouve que ça donne lieu parfois à des dérapages. Puis on essaie de modérer ça, mais parfois, qu'est-ce que vous voulez, on en échappe. Je me demande si on a besoin d'aller jusque-là. Un blog, c'est nécessaire, on veut amorcer une conversation, mais... il y a des risques. Je ne peux pas résumer toutes les situations possibles.
Aussi, il y avait
a une vigilance de tous les instants.
Il y avait un monsieur qui posait une question quand on passe par l'ombudsman pour faire un commentaire. Le danger avec Twitter aussi, c'est qu'on peut interpeller l'animateur directement. Ça a des super bons côtés parce qu'il y a une proximité dans la conversation. Mais quand on se fait insulter, par exemple, ou justement quand on se fait interpeller dans une tweet fight, ça peut être vraiment... ça peut être très difficile.
I just got a very important tweet. #We'reDone. I'd like to thank you all for your participation here.